Welcome, everyone, to episode 118 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, and as always, I am coming to you from Brooklyn, New York, and I could not possibly bring you a bonus episode of this magnitude by myself. So who else is here with me right now?
Well, deep down here in the storm-addled ruins that were once Austin, Texas, it is Steve Guntley, and I'm very excited to be here for this episode in particular because, holy crap, do we have an actual luminary for our show. One of the people that we've talked about maybe the most, or definitely up there, certainly one of the artists who's been involved in the most projects that we have covered. Somebody who is both literally and figuratively a part of the Full Moon family. Who is joining us here today, Jared?
We are joined. I'm thrilled, and I'm sure you are, Steve, also to be joined by Richard Band. Richard Band is a composer who has worked not just within the umbrella of Full Moon and all of the stuff that we've been covering on the show, but a lot of other projects too. Just super prolific, been at it for an incredibly long time, and one of the best in the biz. So, Richard, thank you for making this happen. I feel like this has been a long time coming, but here you are.
Well, thank you guys, both of you, Jared and Stephen. And it's been a long time coming, that's for sure. But it's my pleasure to be here today.
Well, Excellent. We're so happy to have you here. It's always strange having people on the show that we've talked about so much, like not in the sense of like it just feels like I've been gossiping about you or like you're this mythical figure, and then we're talking, and then we're talking to you. So it's pretty fun. We really appreciate you coming on here.
Sure.
Now, I was just curious, IMDb, of course, is always the most accurate source for information. It shows that you have a whopping 142 credits as a composer. Does that sound about right to you? You think that's a rough estimate that works?
Yes, it's about 150-ish. Yeah, somewhere in there.
That's pretty impressive. Now, I would just love to hear a little bit about. I mean, obviously, we'll go into a lot of the different beats of your career, but I would just kind of love to hear about how you got started as a composer. Were you always kind of like musically inclined? Is this something you always wanted to pursue?
Well, okay, I have to go back. Well, you guys obviously have covered Full Moon, my brother's work, so you probably know a lot of his and my personal history. That we didn't grow up in this country. We grew up in Italy. And our father was a film producer, director, and writer. And he before we left this country, roughly 1959, we went to Europe. Before that, my father worked with a myriad of people, but probably his most famous person he worked with for years was John Huston. And he was first John's assistant, and then working with him on screenplays and all that. And my father wrote the screenplay for The Red Badge of Courage that, of course, John Huston did. Anyway, he had a long relationship with Huston, but that split up at a time where Huston was going off to do The African Queen in Africa, and my father did not want to do that because he knew Huston quite well. He knew that one of the main reasons Huston wanted to go there was not necessarily to shoot The African Queen, which of course he wanted to do, but he was an avid hunter, and he wanted to go there and do a lot of hunting, which of course he ended up doing, and thus that 5-month shoot ended up taking a little over a year. And people got malaria. I mean, it was a disaster of sorts, even though it turned out to be, somewhat of a classic. But anyway,
the Clint Eastwood kind of made a fictionalized movie version about the production of that movie. It's kind of legendary.
Decades later or something. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly. So anyway, at that point, my father took us, meaning the family, my brother and I and my mom. We went over to Europe. And first to Sweden, where my father shot a movie, a very good movie called Face of Fire. And then after that, we went to Paris for about a year. I don't know exactly why, but my father was born in France and emigrated to this country when he was about 16 or 17. Anyway, we went to Paris, and at that time, the there was a lot of poop going on that Italy was becoming like the Hollywood of Europe. And thus we then moved to Italy, and that's where my brother and I grew up for the following 11 years. And it was the 1960s period was a golden period in Italy for Italian and Italian American co-productions, great Italian movies, great American movies, the era of the spaghetti Western and the Hercules movies, all those sorts of things. So my father did a bunch of those kinds of movies, Westerns and the Hercules movies. And thus being in Italy, your original question is, how did I get into music? Well, I was about 11 years old, and one of the shoots that he was doing was being shot in a Western being shot in Spain. And I went, both my brother and I, we went to Spain. Luckily, it was during the summertime, so I wasn't in school. And in Spain, I'll never forget it. It was a seminal moment in my life. The first night there, we went out to a dinner, and then after the dinner, went across the square to a flamenco show. And that's where I fell in love with the guitar.
Oh, wow.
Next day, I went out and bought myself a guitar and taught myself how to play. And within about a year or so, I was playing and forming my own bands and so forth and so on. So that was the seminal moment that sort of got me into music. Not necessarily movie scoring then, it was just music.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you can't be born with your last name and not have one of you had to have a proclivity for music.
One would hope so, but most people thought, it's a Hollywood made-up name, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was the genesis. Of course, I had luckily my father was a big lover of classical music, so I had grown up with classical music since I was a little tot, and so I had all this classical music background, but during the 60s and all that, with the advent of guitar, and then of course the Beatles, and then rock and roll, and then progressive jazz, it all sort of developed, and that's where the music came in. And so I was into my own bands and all that up until the age of 17 when I left Italy to come back to this country.
Wow.
That's where it all started. There's an answer for a short question.
No, I love it. Oh my God. I mean, that must have been amazing, because Charlie describes this in his autobiography, this period of growing up in on these sets over in Italy. Like, that must have just been such a surreal, magical thing to just I'm just going to go to work and here's a bunch of guys in togas and these massive Bible epics and these adventure movies. That must have been incredible to grow up that way.
It was incredible. It was, those years in Italy were magical in so many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, the 60s was the period where Rome was the Hollywood of Europe. There was films being made, like I said, the preponderance of which were spaghetti westerns and Hercules type movies. And there were a lot of expatriates living in Rome, of very famous people who were our neighbors and people we knew, like Clint Eastwood. I used to go to the movies with Clint Eastwood, for crying out loud.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff. My best friend was Sheila Lancaster, Burt Lancaster's daughter. I'd run into him all the time. It was the whole, Gore Vidal lived there, Norman Mailer. It was, our neighbor in our apartment house was Loretta Young, the actress.
Wow.
It was one of those incredibly artistic communities that was fantastic to grow up in.
Can you confirm or deny whether or not Marilyn Monroe was in fact your babysitter?
So I am told.
That's just an incredible story from Charlie's book.
We were told that from an early age. This is, I don't, like some people, they can remember when they were babies. I cannot, but yes, I've been told that my entire life.
We will accept it as
I wish
canon.
I can remember. Let's put it that way.
Look, print the legend. That's what I'm saying. That's an amazing story.
And did you, Richard, as a teenager who was into music and stuff, did Charlie ever hire you to play at some of his secret underground Italian clubs?
Well, okay, it's kind of weird. Not really, because I had my own club My brother had his club that lasted a very, very short while. I had inherited a club that was known as Teen Club. It was, and all the Americans would go there on the weekend. I can't even remember how I inherited it, but I had it for about a year and a half, my last 2 years there, until it was closed, until we were closed down for a few reasons. One, it got pretty crazy. Two, it was under an American Episcopalian church, and then the church people let us be there for years. But when it started getting a little too crazy, we were politely asked to FO. And but Charlie had his club. I don't think I ever performed in his club, but I definitely performed in mine, as well as a lot of clubs around Italy and Europe, for that matter.
Yeah.
Later on, when I was a little older, we would tour around Italy and parts of Europe with my band and so forth. So anyway, that's the answer to that question.
Love it.
Now, what was your and Charlie's like relationship like growing up? Have you guys always been close? Do you have kind of like a rivalry? Like, how would you characterize that?
No, I wouldn't say rivalry.
Okay.
I mean, we're brothers. We're close. He always had his thing, and I kind of always had mine. And that's an interesting question, because I don't remember it. I mean, obviously, you always have a kind of rivalry of sorts with a sibling. That's normal. But I would say in a lot of ways ours was maybe less than most in a lot of ways, because we kind of had our own interests. I was, from the age of 11 on, I was always heavily into music.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie, even though for a while he was into music, for a little while he was really always into films and doing that stuff. So we never, came at loggerheads over any particular thing like that. Otherwise, it may have been problematic in the later years when we started working together on hundreds of films or whatever.
And maybe this has something to do with it, Richard. Maybe it doesn't, but I noticed an interesting thing that is similar with me and my younger brother, which is that our birthdays are also only one day apart.
Oh my God.
My younger brother is one day after mine, like you are to Charlie.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah, that sucks.
That's hard. Yeah, you have to share your birthday like that close. Like,
well, it wasn't just sharing birthdays. It was worse, because of our birthdays, December 27th and 28th.
You're right.
2 days after Christmas and 3 days before the New Year, nothing was ever separated.
Oh.
And like it was like the worst. Everything combined birthdays, combined Christmas presents, combined. It was terrible. But
I'm a near Christmas baby as well, so I know that pain all too well. But then having to share it with another sibling is just like extra. Oh man, it's like your gifts are just canceling each other out at that point.
Yeah, basically. I don't think about that much, other than once or twice a year.
I had 5 good years, and then my brother was born the day after my 6th birthday.
Oh,
it all went downhill from there.
Okay. Well, and you have a little more separate. You have a 5 or 6 year separation. My brother and I were so close together. That was a whole other thing. But
right.
I feel your pain.
Thank you. I feel validated by that.
Well, all right. So again, looking at the ever reliable IMDb, it looks like you kind of made the foray into film composition around 1978, and the IMDb is split on whether it's auditions or Laser Blast that came first. Do you have a clear recollection of which, or do you have one that you claim as kind of your first?
Oh yeah, no question. It was Laser Blast.
Good call. Yeah.
Laser Blast was my first legitimate score that I co-scored with Joel Goldsmith, who, as you know, was the son of the famous Jerry Goldsmith, probably one of the best film composers ever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Joel died about 7-8 years ago. Much too young.
No.
Yeah. God, maybe more than 8 years, 9 years. Anyway, he was much too young. But Yeah, Joel and I, that was our first score. Auditions was, am I listed as scoring that?
You are, yeah.
I am.
But you know, things get so kind of like hard to track around that era, like in sort of like movies that weren't really done outside the studio system.
Yeah, I mean, it was all I remember from there is on camera I like played some clarinet, and then I played some clarinet on some of the soundtrack, and it was such a weird film. It wasn't like a typical score, let's just say, or maybe it wasn't, I just forgot, but
that's one we have not covered yet. We did recently do Laser Blast though, and your score on that is so much fun. I mean, how did you finally get
by the way, just for you and your listeners, Laser Blast just came out for the first time on vinyl.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't see that. Oh, amazing.
Yep. First time ever on vinyl. That's right. Just like a matter of like 3 weeks ago. So for all the fans that want to have that, it would be a lot of fun to listen to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and they can even get it on my site if they want. Which is richardbandmusic.com.
Okay.
I have a few that I personally autograph, but it's available everywhere.
Okay, I'm hopping on there because I definitely I want to add to like my Laser Blast collection. I definitely want to get a I realized they came out with action figures of the aliens that Dave Allen designed.
Yeah.
I want to get some of those. I love those little alien designs.
Let me just see.
Oh, you have one? Oh.
I think so. Yeah, hang on.
Oh, Jared, you're muted.
What you can't tell right now is that Richard is pulling out all of this amazing paraphernalia. It's really great radio. You can't see all the incredible things he's showing us. Oh, no, there it is.
Oh,
Laser
that's
Blast
gorgeous.
is there. Love it. Is it is the vinyl, is it just like a black vinyl or is it colored vinyl?
I think it's black. I literally have not even opened one yet. You know, if you go onto my site, there's a few pictures of it.
Yeah.
So you can see it. I think it's black. But there's a whole fold out, which is really cool as well. It's in plastic right now, so I can't open it this second.
It looks great. There's a gatefold, you said. I'm really curious what the artwork on the gatefold is. Now, Richard, because we have you here, I have to ask you this. We need to take a quick detour from Charles Band Productions and Full Moon related stuff, because I need to at least anecdotally know a little bit about how you ended up on this one particular project and why you chose to score it the way you did. It is one of my all-time favorites, and I am holding the vinyl up right now.
Oh, that's a great one.
There it is.
House of Sorority Row, which is a movie I love. The vinyl's really great too. Talk about something with a great gatefold. This has a really great gatefold on the inside, and it's like a white and green kind of pink and green splatter vinyl. But I love this movie, and your score to this movie is so unique comparatively given the other scores for slasher movies at the time. I know there's a psychological element to this movie, which I think maybe played a factor into it. But I just want to know a little bit about your involvement in that movie and why you decided to use the themes and motifs you did in this one, because it's a really fantastic score to a really, I guess, underseen, but maybe not in the right circles underseen, but really a great slasher movie.
Yeah. Thank you. There's that score at the time got a lot of notoriety for the reasons you basically just illustrated, because it was a very lush orchestral score, very, very thematic, set against basically a slasher movie. I mean, that's what it was. And at the time, as you're both aware of it, slasher movies were treated very differently. Most of them had electronic crappy scores done with farfisas and synthesizers and shit. I was lucky enough to be able to actually go to London and score that with part of the, I think it was the London Philharmonic or one of the symphonies there, which was incredibly fortunate. I had done another score. I ended up doing 3 scores, and the music supervisor at the time for the company that did this was Film Ventures, the fellow named Ego Cantor. He was an old school music supervisor / editor, very talented man. And he had discovered me from my score from The Alchemist, which I had done maybe a year or so before. And then I developed a relationship with him, and subsequently ended up doing 3 or 4 scores for Film Ventures. The one after that, I think the next one I did after that was Mutant, another big orchestral score. And also did that in London with the National Philharmonic there. And yeah, I don't. It was one of those interesting situations where Ego Cantor was his name, where they sought me out again because, according to what I was told, because of my score and the way that I treated The Alchemist, very thematic and a whole different way to approach things. And like I said, I ended up doing like 4 scores for them at a wonderful time. You know, all of which, I think almost all of which I did in London. So
oh wow,
it was very fortunate, and that happens to be one of my favorite, certainly one of my earliest, one of my favorite scores, a very lush orchestral score set against the whole, and it got a lot of great publicity at the time. The score did, as well as the movie. It was a pretty good movie, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it's earned kind of a cult reputation over time. And it definitely, our audience is probably very in the bag for it at this point. But I mean, I do have to talk about, you know, my personal favorite score of yours is, of course, Reanimator, which is,
Never heard of it. What's that?
yeah, right, yeah, it's some movie came out like 40-ish years ago this year. I don't know, something like that. Have you been
almost exactly 40 years this month, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
40 years. That's right.
Have you been kind of out on the circuit a little bit with like Barbara and Jeffrey and all of them for the anniversary?
Not as much as them, but we're doing several things together. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'll be going to Orlando, Florida for a big con then with with Barbara and Jeffrey and Bruce. Yeah, we've done a few this year together, and and probably we'll be going to Sitges in Spain. They're doing a big celebration in October of it, so the same 4 or 5 people will be going there, and as well as Brian Usna, of course, the producer.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I do remember that film. Just
of course. We've been really excited to see just kind of like sort of the stops being pulled out to kind of celebrate that movie on its anniversary this year. Like everybody's really, you know, I've been seeing a lot of revival screenings like kind of everywhere, and new posters, new DVDs, all of that. It's been very cool because it's just it is our personal favorite movie that we've covered on this list, and your score is so much of kind of what makes that movie work. That is a movie that is really balancing some very tricky tones. And if you go too far one way or the other, like, and it's dealing with such extreme content that like that could be like the most upsetting movie of all time. And instead it's like darkly funny and almost whimsical, you know? And I think so much of that is coming off of your score. I was just curious about some of your inspirations and what went into making that movie.
Before you answer, Richard, if I just want to say, like, if this is how you know Steve and I are very in sync with one another, because this was almost verbatim a question that I had for you as well. And it stemmed from when we had Barbara Crampton on the show. She was talking about, she basically gave you credit, Richard, for being the person who decided this movie needs to lean into the comedy. It needs to have kind of a silly, whimsical score and not a serious, straightforward score. She credited you. Apparently she mentioned there was some, not conflict, but maybe disagreement about what the tone of the music should be. So I think, Steve's question is essentially like with the same question that I had. So yeah, like
we did not confer on this.
Yeah, where did you come up? Where did you come up with these recurring themes and motifs for this movie?
Well, okay. Yes, you're both right in the sense that the scoring of this movie was kind of you had to be almost on a razor's edge. If you tipped one way, in my opinion, it wouldn't work. If you tipped the other way, equally, it wouldn't work. So from the beginning, I was confronted creatively with this dilemma, because in reality, from the outset, well, first of all, you have to keep in mind that the original cut, the first cut of Reanimator, which for every film, a first cut is always long. That's normal before you start doing some proper editing and all that. First cut's always long. But this film was crazy. It was like 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It was insane. And but even at that length, I got the sense that there was an element in this film that was just so over the top that I had a feeling that was borne out when it was finally edited down to a reasonable amount of time, pretty much what you see to this day. I had a feeling that if it was to be treated seriously from the outset, that people would get up and walk out. I felt that in my bones. And originally, both Stuart and Brian, to a certain extent, I mean, they weren't rock solid, insisting on something, but they originally did view this as like the scariest, most horrifying film in the world, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I viewed it differently. So we had about a month or so of going back and forth, kind of like what Barbara described, I mean, not contentious or anything, but I was really trying to get my point across, that if this was to be treated totally seriously, that people would not bear it. Especially, it's so hard to talk about these things 40 years later, because 40 years ago, there were just certain things, that were done on the screen that today nobody would even think twice about. But back then, it was like, way over the top.
Oh, it's still pretty shocking. Like, yeah, in context, it's like some of the stuff in that.
It was way, way, way over the top.
Yeah.
So I saw this and I said, all of the great elements of this film could still be there and remain. All the shock, all the this, but the audience needed permission, in my opinion, to be able to be horrified but laugh at it at the same time. That if they did, that they could laugh at the horror, not like ha ha ha, I'm watching a comedian, but they could get into the absurdity and obscenity and insanity of the whole thing. That was my opinion, and therefore it had to be treated not with funny humor, but it had to be treated with a kind of a wink to the audience, that basically would give them permission to enjoy this for what it was, that it was just a movie, it's just a crazy story and whatever. So that was sort of came clear to me from the outset of what was needed, and ultimately that's what ended up being the elements of the score.
And your score so perfectly complements the performance that Jeffrey Combs is giving in particular, because he's also doing something kind of delicate, right? Like his character is a creep.
He's the driving force of the film.
Absolutely. And his character could be such a creep, if you didn't have this kind of a manic, like crazed element that Jeffrey Combs is bringing to it.
It's mania.
And
that's what the music had to portray. You had to get into his mania and not see it as horrible or evil or this or that, just to see it as the mania that it was.
But just like your score, he's bringing a little bit of a light touch. Like there is something funny about him. There is something vulnerable about him. And so like having your score playing a little lighter, like it has kind of these Hitchcockian sort of like rhythms to it, which are just so perfect for the tone that they're trying to set with this. And it just really brings the whole thing together.
Well, thank you. And that was obviously the intent. And I think it's, the score, obviously Jeffrey and Barbara, obviously, Stewart's direction, the story, all these elements. When you're doing a film, you don't know what's going to happen, but I always felt from the outset that the ingredients and the way they were put together delivered a substantial film, and certainly that's borne out over the last 40 years.
Definitely.
And it did set, in my humble opinion, it did set a certain standard for this style of film. This, I guess you'd call it sort of horror comedy in a certain ways. That has, I think, been copied, basically, that style of over the years. And now it's kind of common to treat things in that way, but it wasn't in the day.
Yeah.
Three things that come to mind for me immediately when I think of that is I think of the trioxin theme from Return of the Living Dead, which I think totally sets the tone for that movie. And then I also think of the Jay Giles Band theme song from Fright Night, and the Reanimator score. Like those three, and the Claudio Simonetti main theme from Demons. Like those four, like to me are like, I always think of them kind of in the same thought of where they just, it's like they're ushering in this new subgenre of like these kind of big and over the top, in a lot of ways, winking horror comedies, and they all of them have these scores. I mean, Brad Fiedel's score for Fright Night is quite gorgeous in a lot of places, and it's it's a synth driven, very kind of like, has kind of a cool, sexy motif that plays throughout it, but the theme is very campy, and I mean that in a good way. The Jay Giles Band song, and I just there's a bunch of those that I feel like they just elevate. And they kind of present, like a new, because I mean, you look a few years back before that, Friday the 13th came out, and then there were a bunch of other slasher movies whose scores were primarily just strings, shrieking strings, which can be effective.
Yeah.
But I think Reanimator kind of sits right at the top of the new kind of era of those scores coming in. And you mentioned, Richard, the Sitges Film Festival. Right. I know one of the scores that you did that has a big anniversary next year won Best Original Soundtrack at that festival. Which one was that?
That was for From Beyond, the film that Stewart did the next year after Reanimator. That's right.
I mean, what a 1-2 punch, like for your first and second movies, and for them to come out within a year of each other. Like Stuart Gordon really hit the ground running with those two. And I mean, both just incredible scores. And again, another very tricky tone, another very extreme, potentially very off-putting movie if you get it wrong. And instead it is a very funny, weird, cool movie.
Yeah. From Beyond's very, very cool. From Beyond, the writing was quite a bit more sophisticated than Reanimator. A lot of very interesting string work on Reanimator, mixed with some interesting synthesizers and stuff to create, that whole other world of thing within the resonator, and the pineal gland. It had a whole other atmosphere had to be created. And it's funny that you bring that up, because of in that film, people always talk about the as far as the score goes, they always talk about the overall ambience and the weirdness and the use of the strings with the synths. But the other thing, they just love Barbara's sexy scene in the lingerie when she's taken over with the resonator, because I treat it in a very sexy but weird way, and that for good reason it sticks out, because she's awfully sexy there too.
Few people in cinema have looked better than Barbara looks in that scene. Like, just all love to her. She looks unbelievable in that movie.
I agree.
Yeah, and she's really funny in that, and that's one of her better characters that she's gotten to play too. She really gets to kind of go for it and display her range in a big way.
Absolutely true.
Definitely have a lot of love for From Beyond. I'm curious a little bit about, we've covered a lot of full moon movies on this show, and full moon movie, believe it or not, one or two. And a uniting factor in a lot of full moon movies is that they usually have very, very short production schedules. Sometimes, 7, 8, 9 days at a time, And you, as the composer for many of those films, how do you adapt your workflow to like produce like individual, like unique scores for all these movies on such a quick turnaround?
Massive amounts of drugs.
I knew it. I owe myself $1.
Me and Elon Musk.
Right? Yeah, you're just jacked up on ketamine and just doing it right in your scores.
I got to try some of that ketamine shit. Sounds pretty interesting. I don't know. The schedules were always crazy. Some worse than others, some better than others. But I mean, some were. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Basically, you're given a certain amount. I always fight for more time.
Yeah, of course.
That's the nature of the beast, and it's rarely available. But with my brother, he always realized that. Even though that a lot of those films were done in 7 or 10 days, the older ones were longer than that, but but still.
Empire era, you guys had a lot more time. Yeah.
Very short production spans. At least to his credit, he realizes that you got to put some real time and effort into the post-production if you're going to make things work, on the off end. And if you're on these very short shooting schedules, it's got to come out in a different way. And so while the post schedules were always very, very difficult, and most were, crazy, some were more reasonable than others. And I don't know. You sit down, I don't know, creatively. I don't have the energy today to do that anymore, to be honest with you.
Oh, sure.
In the day, if I had to knock something out in 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever the hell it was, somehow it would get done.
Yeah.
And of course, it depended on what it was. If it was something that was a larger project, like with an orchestral score, it would take a few weeks. That's just the nature. If it was something that I could do, in my own studio and with plugins and electronics, that was something else. I know Primevals took a lot longer, because that was not only like 80 minutes of music, a massive amount of music, but this huge orchestral sound.
And Dave Allen is probably going for a pretty specific vibe with that movie, like old Harryhausen epics and very, very kind of classical kind of score that you delivered on that one.
Right. It's a very classical, exactly. Big classical adventure or symphonic type score. Exactly.
Yeah.
That obviously, took longer. And, and I did a lot of good portion of the recording overseas, because there's no way we could afford to do it here.
Yeah.
And so it all depends,
Yeah.
Somehow I found the energy and got them done, with massive amounts of drugs, like I told you.
There you go. Yeah. He's sitting on a pile of cocaine, like Conan the Barbarian, on a bunch of
very
skulls.
soft.
Yeah. I have a question, which is sort of a natural progression, I feel like, from Steve's question, which is Steve's talking about how do you get these things done in those quick turnovers. My question, so we obviously know, Charles Band as a producer often had this mantra of sort of like, make a poster first with an idea, and then follow it up by making the movie. So I always was wondering a little bit about your process, because some of the ones that jump out to me in terms of like, this was a poster idea, then it became a movie, it ended up being two of your most memorable, if not full scores, at least main themes. And that would be Ghoulies and Troll. Mm-hmm. And Ghoulies, to me, is not a movie that Steve and I love particularly. However, your main theme for Ghoulies is incredibly memorable. And Troll, I think Steve and I like quite a bit more than we like Ghoulies.
Mhm.
But that little kind of chant song that you came up with for Troll,
so cool.
those are
so weird.
excellent. And I was wondering, on things like that, did you have kind of a vibe where you were like, I think it should sound like this, or did you score it to the completed movies, or did you have these little melodies and motifs already thought of and you wanted to use them for something and found that those fit? I know there was a lot of words there and I apologize. But
I'll just take all the ors out and answer the
yes,
question.
There you go.
Okay, let's tackle Troll first.
sure.
Excuse me.
Troll is still to this day one of my favorite scores, certainly in the top 5 or 6. I think overall the score is really very, very good score.
Yeah.
And beautifully recorded, you know, all live orchestra and live voices and all that. And the song, I had to come up with the song before they shot even a frame of the movie. So the song was actually completed weeks and weeks before the movie. And after they shot the movie, then I finished orchestrating it. But the basic song John Buechler took onto the stage, and they were playing back just like you would in a musical. They played back the track, and Buechler would do his magic with the puppets and what have you to do, you know, his best to mouth the words of the song that I had come up with. Again, and so I had read the script. I knew what it was all about, and I had created the themes for Troll way before they ever shot the movie. Which is normally a little bit unique, because usually you wait to the end of the movie and you see what the movie is. But I had such a feeling for Troll and where it was, and it's one of my favorite genres. I love fantasy type stuff, so it was very sort of up my alley to create that whole sound and that atmosphere of an otherworldly, you know, gremlins, goblins, trolls, and you know, witches, and all that sort of thing. So that was done way before the movie was shot. Well, way before, certainly weeks, if not a couple of months. And everybody latched on to that way in advance. So it was almost like the feel and thematic structure was there even for the shoot. So once the film was done, the scoring for me came pretty easy, because it was sort of baked in a way, the whole feel of it. And that song became the Cantus Profane song became, in fact, I think of my entire catalog, I think it's still like the most played thing, even more than Reanimator, all across the world. People love that song. I call it the Herber West song, because it's got that vibe in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, does that answer your Troll part of it?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very well.
Yeah.
Okay. Ghoulies was a whole other thing. Ghoulies was a very, very fast job. I actually had help with some of that on Ghoulies by the late Shirley Walker, a wonderful composer who I worked with on a few films. And but Ghoulies, they didn't have either time or money to do the whole score fresh, let's just say. So we only recorded like 20 minutes of original music for Ghoulies. All the rest of it, I actually used music that I had done for other movies for my brother, and tracked parts of it with other music from movies I had already done, and you know, did some creative editing and added some stuff, and basically like that. So about a third of Ghoulies is actually what I would call really original music, right, for the film. The other 2/3 was basically tracked from a lot of stuff that that fit nicely and all that, but
Yeah.
it was just one of those things.
Hmm.
Another very, very fast. That was one of those very fast projects with almost no money at the time.
And it's such an odd movie when you look at it now, like tonally, like it's a lot of things to try and like keep together if you want to like score, because it's a little bit of a fantasy movie, it's a little bit of a horror movie, it's a little bit of a comedy, like it's kind of trying a lot of different things.
I agree. I think it's not one of my favorite movies by a long shot. Let's just put it that way. I think it could have been a much better movie if it had been given more time, and it could have been more cohesive and all of that. But they were, if I remember correctly, they were really kind of rushing this out because that famous ad was we were talking about, back in that day when you'd come out with an idea or a poster, and you'd go off to the MeFed Film Festival, Cannes Film Festival, and sell this idea, and no script, no anything, just a concept and a great couple of great pieces of art, and boom, you got the financing for a movie. And somehow that's kind of the way that was born, because that was such a brilliant ad campaign, to get to the end, and it just made things roll very, very rapid. I just remember it was very fast, the whole thing. Got to get it out here. The iron's hot, that sort
We
of
get
thing.
it out there while people are still scared to sit on the toilet.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we've talked about Ghoulies. That was like historically kind of a big turning point for Empire. Like the
Absolutely.
success of that movie is why we have Reanimator and From Beyond, and like the whole
That's correct.
the whole Full Moon experiment like is continuing to this day because of those little monsters in a toilet. So don't knock it. Yeah, it's and I think by the time we get to Ghoulies 2, which if I recall correctly, your dad directed, it is a much more cohesive, like fun. Like it feels like the series is kind of like figured out its vibe a lot more.
So, Richard, I want to ask
I
you.
didn't score Ghoulies 2.
I was just going to say Fuzby Morse scored Ghoulies 2. And
Yeah.
Ghoulies 2, I think Steve and I both like a bit more because it's sort of the outrageous Ghoulies movie I think we both wanted. What was your reasoning for not scoring Ghoulies 2? Was it just a conflict of time? You were working on something else? Or did you just really hate Ghoulies that much?
Yeah, no, it was two. Yeah, it was two. No. I never hated the original.
I'm joking.
I'm basically with you. I think Ghoulies 2 was probably a better, movie put together. It was, more thought out and blah, 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 all those things. But no, there were two reasons for not doing Ghoulies 2. One, I was slammed with a lot of projects. Two, I had brought on Fuzby Morse way back in the day. Fuzby Morse and I go back to actually my last 2 years of Italy. He's an old friend of mine who grew up with me in Italy, and he was in my band in Italy, and we toured around together the last 2 years. And I brought him out here in, God, I don't know, 90. I don't know. He was in Miami, and I brought him out here and taught him basically the ropes of how to score movies, and then supervised him when on Dolls, because I was too jammed to do Dolls, and subsequently then I thought he would be great, to do Ghoulies, and of course my dad was fine with it, as Charlie was, and that's kind of how it came about. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, no, it's so fun, like going back to that era in particular, and I mean, we are a show called Puppet Masters Castle Freaks, and you have done the score for both of those films, and the Puppet Master theme is also like so cool. It's this kind of like gothic kind of, I mean, I'm not a musician, but like gothic, it seems like a waltz tone, like it's just kind of like it's just got this classical kind of,
it's a waltz,
courtesan kind of like feel to it, which helps infuse that. It sets the tone again for that series, which again, you're talking about a killer puppet movie, that could be taken very silly. It could be a light comedy, and Puppet Master is not a comedy. Like Puppet Master is going for some scares, and it's going for like a vibe that I think it really hits.
Well, Puppet Master definitely the music, and mainly the theme to Puppet Master and the movie Puppet Master, it's become such a thing. You can't separate one from the other anymore. The success of the movie is because of the music. The success of the music is because of the movie.
Yeah.
So intertwined. I mean, I've had literally 5-year-old kids come up to me at some of these conventions singing the Puppet Master theme. I mean, it's like crazy time.
Yeah.
And now what you're alluding to, the waltz and the creative process of, and I've been asked this quite a few times, I'll relay it to you. To me, Puppet Master was not about the, just some puppets doing killing. That was just a side junk. Really, the Puppet Master was a tragic story about Toulon, the main character, who was persecuted by the Nazis, and the puppets are lost souls, basically, that he managed to save in a way, and put their souls into these puppets so that they could survive. So it's a tragic story to begin with. That's the way I approach the music, because there's a sadness in the music, but as importantly, and you bring up the waltz part of it, I had to tie in and make this a period piece of sorts, because if you think about it, the favorite type of music played back even before the Nazis, but certainly during the Nazis, were in Austria and Germany, all this, were waltzes. That's what they played. That was their favorite form of music through Strauss and all of this. They played these waltzes. That's where I came up with the idea that had to have a waltz as the main vibe, so that it depicted the period that we were in.
I cannot believe that did not occur to me at all until just now. That's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah.
That was the whole impetus. And then the midsection of the main theme is the more playful part, almost circus-like playful part of the puppetry.
Yeah.
So you've got the main theme with the waltz is actually somewhat sad and tragic. The mid part is the part that is a little more circus-like, puppety, and all that.
Yeah, that part, I love that part, because that part sounds sort of like organ grindery.
Yes.
And I'm like, I love that about it.
There you go. Go back to the waltzes, the old-fashioned organ grinders, and that was the whole sort of vibe and sound that I was going for in the original movies.
Yeah, and it's kind of a what is it? The Three Penny Opera, like the Carlyle era kind of cool stuff like that. Like it's just a really cool, evocative score. And then Castle Freaks is just to date the single like gnarliest movie that we've covered on this show. Just like in the best possible way. But like,
Castle Freaks, don't go anywhere.
Oh yeah. But I mean that Castle Freaks
again
remains intense.
You can't see it right now, but Richard is sitting on a huge pile of cocaine. He is reaching frantically for any Castle Freak merchandise that he can find. So we're waiting to see what he pulls out of this mountain of cocaine. He somehow has ketamine. He said he'd never tried it, but now he has it.
On vinyl.
Oh, what
so
a
I have
gorgeous
that.
vinyl.
The waxwork vinyl is gorgeous. Actually, you could talk about it for a second, Richard. I'm going to grab mine because I want to be able to show Steve the actual vinyl itself too.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't have this one yet. We are both like vinyl collectors, but I don't have this one yet, so I need to get it.
You can order yours from me.
There you go, direct from the source.
Yeah, that just came out a couple of months ago through Waxwork. And they did a great job.
And that movie is kind of more in the vein of like what Reanimator could have been. And I think, where it's like, this is a movie that's like a little too intense for some people, and
Oh,
in again, in the best way, and I think it's built into this movie a little bit more to be that level of intense. But did that inform a lot of your scoring on that as well? Just seeing how kind of out there this movie
yeah, well,
was.
this was not that Castaway was not a movie, that had any hint of humor or satire or interesting one-liners or character-driven stuff from a Reanimator standpoint. It was a sadly romantic story with massive tragedy in an Italian castle.
If you said this while I was off mic, I apologize. But what I love about the Castle Freak score is it has this energy of like these frantic kind of like strings, almost like a Brahms violin concerto or like a Paganini caprice or something like that. And it's just a jarring score in that way. Is very sort of like unnerving, which is fitting because of the movie that it is. And here's the gatefold. Steve, hold on, I'll play.
Oh yeah.
I have my Castle Freak vinyl here, same one. So this is the gatefold.
Oh yeah. I think you sent me a photo of this when you got it. Yeah, this looks so cool.
And then the actual
the vinyl is really cool on this too.
Yeah. So the record itself has got Giorgio's face on the sleeve here, and it's
it's like the blood. Oh yeah, that's really rad. Yeah. And we both have the Reanimator vinyl as well. The like neon green looking one. Yeah, that's really cool.
Right. Well, Reanimator. I don't know if you guys know this, but Reanimator, the vinyl, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the record that launched Waxworks.
Did it? Oh, I did not know that.
That was the very first score that they ever put out that actually launched the entire label.
We love Waxworks. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I mean, they do incredible work.
Right. They've done like they did. Let's see. They did Reanimate. They did Bride of Reanimator.
There it is. Yeah. We got some Ghoulies. Got some Ghoulies action going on here.
What's the other one they did? Let's see. Bride of Reanimator, From Beyond. But they didn't do Waxworks. Didn't do that one. That's a different.
No, that's a Terror Vision.
They did do Troll. Yeah. Okay.
And Castle Freak. So I think it's four of mine that Waxworks has actually done. But we're doing a reissue within the next few weeks. You guys will be happy to know of From Beyond again.
Hell yeah.
Press and the 40th year Reanimator again.
Oh, amazing. Oh, it's so cool. Okay. I'm
highly suggestible, so I'll take all of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have so many different versions of the Reanimator vinyl on my shelf.
Well, that's like right now how I have it on 4K. My wife, when Ignite Films put out the new 4K, I asked because it actually, I think it dropped on my birthday, was the day they released it, and I was like, I saw the date ahead of time, and I went, I want that, and she went in and she bought me the sort of bare bones 4K. And then after she bought it, she realized it and she went, oh, I meant to buy you one of the like box sets. So she went back in and bought the box set.
Oh.
But I already owned Reanimator before all that on the Arrow 4K.
Okay.
So now I have just 3 separate 4K versions of Reanimator sitting in my shelf.
You know what I say? You can never be reanimated enough.
You cannot.
No, that's
right. So don't worry about
it. you simply cannot. And actually, I feel like I recently saw also while we have you here, Richard, talking about your scores, that the vinyl for Parasite recently was released too.
That's right. Demi Moore's very first film. That's
Absolutely,
right.
Sure was. Yeah.
That's a cool score, actually.
That one is.
Maybe one day people will appreciate her. Maybe she'll have a career resurgence.
Yeah, she's done okay.
She can't complain too much.
Yeah.
We should all fail like her, right?
Exactly. Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Oh, seriously.
She's fine. She's good. Good for her. Whatever she's gotten in her life, she deserves, and she's a talented woman.
Yeah. I mean, we were both huge fans of The Substance from last year, so that's a pretty unbelievable movie. But Richard, you've been so generous with your time. We're not going to take up too much of your time here, but it's been so cool to get to talk to you about your career here. Is there anything that you're working on now that you'd like to draw people's attention to, or just like any projects that you've worked on that you feel like have not gotten enough love that people need to pay attention? Need to go check out.
We need another 3 hours for that.
Because it's like the entire catalog should be.
Listen, I got
here.
nowhere to go. Strap in.
No, recently, one of the last 2 films I did is interesting. It's out now on pay-per-views and streaming and everything. It's called Ed Kemper, about the serial killer.
Yeah. Oh, with Brink Stevens.
There you go. That's out and now. And in June, I have another film coming out by the same director, Chad Farron, very good upcoming guy, and also about a serial killer, and that's called Dorothea, about Dorothea Puentes, another serial killer. She's that serial killer who had the most incredible rose garden because she was taking in Social Security elderly people and killing them, taking the Social Security and burying them in her rose garden.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was a grim story. Yeah.
All true stuff. So essentially the last 2 films I've done were both about serial killers.
You're getting typecast. Yeah.
But actually they're good films. So
the
first one's Ed Kemper, and then Dorothea, I think comes out in June or July.
Okay.
And other than that, a couple of other things on the slate, and just amazingly still working, which is all good. And although I think for me, one of my favorite scores in the last few years, that of course the film was 30 40 years in the making, was Primevals. I just think, to me, that was still a labor of love. And
I'm a huge fan of Primevals. Yeah, we were so happy that finally got to see the light of day, because it's a pretty special movie.
Exactly, that's the way I feel about it. And I was very proud of the score that I did. It's nice, big old-fashioned orchestral adventure, type of score. So there's a special place, I think, in my entire family's heart for that movie in particular, since it literally was, I don't know, over 35 years in the making, whatever.
We think, I think there's a lot of asterisks on this probably, but we believe that The Primevals is the movie with the longest production in film history. Because technically Dave Allen started work on that in 1968. And then just kind of worked on it steadily. And then, of course, he passed in 1999, and 26 years later, we got it, and it's amazing.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So that might have the record, and it is a worthwhile movie to check out if people haven't.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah.
And if any of your audience want my music, they can visit my site. I've got CDs, I've got all the vinyls we talked about, and more.
Yeah.
And that's richardbandmusic.com, and they can come visit me, and or just come visit the site and see a bunch of weird shit on there.
Hell yeah. Weird
Our
shit.
audience loves weird shit.
I don't know if you can have weird shit on the internet, though. I'm not sure if that's allowed.
I know it's not really the place for it, is it?
It might be violating the rules there.
It's really a well-policed place.
Yes,
so
very well.
nothing gets through. When we had Brink Stevens on last year, she talked a lot about the Ed Kemper movie. So I'm excited now that that's out to finally check that out. And if you go to Richard's website and check out some of the music that he has been talking to us about, I'm sure you're going to find something that you love. If you enjoy the show that we bring to you week after week, then the best way to let us know is by going to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leaving us a 5-star review, a 5-star rating, I should say, maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. You can communicate with us directly through Spotify comments also, or email us at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com if you would like to give us some feedback on the show. If you want to keep up with what we're doing, the best way to do it is Instagram. You can follow us at puppetmasters_castlefreaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared, or Steve at Minotaur Matador. We also post on Threads and Blue Sky, and we put audio versions of the show on YouTube. But you know what? That's a lot. And Steve, this isn't even the only show that he wants to promote. Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I also host a show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together into one beautiful word, because that is what we do. We are watching movies and then playing the video games based on those movies. So we will at some point encounter some of Richard's work if your Wikipedia is to be believed, because it says that you did some work on the video game adaptation of Waterworld in 1995. So I'm not sure if you have a...
Yeah, no, I did about 10 video games, from Star Trek to Waterworld to Clay Fighter.
You did Clay Fighter? Oh my God. I played so much Clay Fighter when I was a kid. Oh my God.
Clay Fighter.
Amazing.
Although I'm uncredited, I did quite a bit of music on Call of Duty 3 with Joel. Wow. That's because Joel and I were working together. Joel Goldsmith was credited on that. It was his gig.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
What else game-wise? Waterworld, Descent Under Mountain, Stone Keep, all those great games back in the day. I should get back into games now.
Man.
That's true.
There's some amazing stuff happening with game music in particular right now.
Yes.
Check out the game Clair Obscur. It's this new French game that just came out that has some of the most beautiful music you'll ever hear in your life. But either way, that all happens over at Cinema Arcade. You can find that wherever podcasts are downloaded. What a pleasure to speak to Richard Band. Thank you so much for taking the time and for being here with us today.
I'm glad you're enjoying the crazy movies.
It has been a journey for sure. We have definitely and we've gotten to meet so many cool people like yourself. So it's been really cool.
Well, thank you guys. Good luck to you both, and we'll do it again in another 40 years.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I can tell already I won't have anything going on. So I'm free that day.
Calendar is empty. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Well,
so
guys,
thank you.
Keep me posted.
For sure.
We will.
For sure.
Okay,
thank you so much to Richard Band for joining us today. And thank you to everyone who has been supporting the show and listening since day one. We will see you on Friday for our regularly scheduled program of Demon in the Bottle. Until then, take care. And I wanted to do some kind of I wanted to kind of try to do the troll song, but I would have butchered it, so I didn't even bother. I like the way you described it. Yeah, I like the way you described it, Richard, which was like the Herbert West.
Yeah.
There it is.
Herbert West.